You can't fight billionaires when you're being funded by billionaires. Good morning. So my question for Rokana is basically like, how is it possible to mount a successful defense against the Trump campaign when essentially the people who are supposed to be the opposition are receiving money from essentially the same sources that Trump is receiving them from? I don't get it, because we have, you can't fight billionaires when you're being funded by billionaires. I'm been listening to AOC and Bernie Sanders, and they talk a good game, but at the end of the day, it just seems more like glorified fundraising rather than actual resistance. Whereas, people who are mounting resistance are being told that they are not allowed to be a part of these
Santiago,
gatherings.
let's get the answer to your question. Thank you.
Well, Santiago, first of all, no one is saying don't speak up and don't be vocal, and I appreciate your being part of a resistance. I have spoken up for students who have protested at universities, spoken up very strongly of those who have been detained. And I went to Yale recently, gave a speech saying, if you see people being harassed or speaking up, it's your job, your duty to speak up on constitutional values. Second, I want to defend what Bernie and AOC are doing, because it's not a fundraising tool. Trust me, they can raise money. They don't have to go out there. And at 83, Bernie doesn't need to be doing 5 rallies or 2 days to raise money. He's not even running for anything in the future. They're doing this because they're putting pressure in red districts to get Republican members of Congress to speak up and to give some hope in this country that people are going to stand up. And there's a Harvard University professor who said that you need 3.5% of a population to mobilize historically to resist the move to authoritarianism. And Bernie's efforts and AOC's efforts and others' efforts in that regard, Maxwell Frost, Chris Murphy, myself on town halls, is to mobilize people, to have that civic uprising. The final point, I totally agree with you. We need the big money out of politics. That's why Summer Lee and I have the Abolish Super PAC bill. No bill I've done so far has gotten as much traction as this one. It says if you can only give a candidate like me maximum of $3,500, why should you be able to write $1 million check to super PACs? Even under Citizens United, that should be abolished. Our bill does that, and it passed in Maine. 70% of the vote is going to go up to the Supreme Court. And so I'm in agreement with you getting rid of PAC money and super PAC money. It's why I'm one of 10 members of Congress who doesn't take any PAC money, and I don't have a super PAC. David Baldeo literally flipped his vote on Medicaid after I and Bernie and AOC went there. I went there, then Bernie and AOC went there. And a few weeks later, he said, I voted to cut Medicaid. Now I'm not going to vote to cut Medicaid. So this organizing matters.
Yeah, I guess so. That's substantial stuff.